What if one of America's most revered poets had her history straightwashed? Hi there, I'm Chris with a K, and welcome back to This Week in Queer History, where we celebrate queer moments and icons that I wish I had known about as a young gay kid growing up in conservative America. This week, we're exploring a literary giant whose delicate dashes and enigmatic stances have enchanted generations. But behind the lace curtain and white dress was a woman who defied the expectations of her time, loved with intensity, and wrote words that still make us swoon. So buckle up, because we're talking about the incomparable Emily Dickinson and the queerness that lived between her lines.
This week in queer history, stories told with love and glee.
So let's set the scene. Amherst, Massachusetts, the 19th century. Emily Dickinson is born on December 10th, 1830, into a well-established but emotionally complicated family. And she grows up in a large home known as the homestead and spends much of her adult life within its walls. To many, this might sound really repressive, and in some ways it was. But it's also the setting for a rich inner world, queer intimacy, and the creation of some of the most innovative poetry in American literature. Now, I know you might be thinking, wait, Emily Dickinson, the one with the white dresses and the funeral imagery? Yes, that Emily Dickinson. But let's step away from the mythology and lean into the mystery. During the 1850s, Emily developed what would become her most profound and passionate relationship with her sister-in-law, Susan Gilbert Dickinson. Susan, or Susie as Emily called her, wasn't just family. She was Emily's muse, her confidant, and now many scholars believe the love of her life. Emily sent Susan more than 300 letters over the years, so a lot more than she sent to any other person. And that alone speaks volumes, but it's what those letters say that really opens our eyes. Here's a line from one of the letters written in 1852. "Susie, will you indeed come home next Saturday and be my own again, and kiss me as you used to? I feel that now I must have you, that the expectation once more to see your face again makes me feel hot and feverish, and my heart beats so fast. My darling, so near I seem to you that I disdain this pen and wait for a warmer language." Okay, that is not just friendly roommate energy. What Emily and Susan shared went far beyond the acceptable boundaries of Victorian society. Women were not supposed to act like that. Of course, emotional intensity among women was common and even encouraged as long as it didn't hint at romance. But Dickinson's words, her longing, her fever, all point to a relationship that was romantic and sexual in nature, even if it had to be coded. And it wasn't just the letters. Dickinson's poetry is filled with emotional intensity, erotic tension, and subversive ambiguity. Her famous poem, Wild Nights, has been interpreted as a passionate ode to physical desire. Scholars and fans have spent decades combing through her work, finding queerness not just in what she said, but in how she said it. With hyphens that disrupt the flow, capitalization that grabs attention, and metaphors, ooh la la. And let's not forget, this was a woman writing before the word homosexual even existed. She was creating queer literature before queer literature had a name. For much of the 20th century, Dickinson was portrayed as a lonely spinster, too fragile for the world. But a lot of that imagery came from the people who edited and published her work. Think Mabel Loomis Todd, the mistress of Emily's brother Austin. Mabel had a rocky relationship with Susan and erased or censored many of Susan's contributions and connections to Emily. It's taken generations of scholars, especially feminists and queer theorists, to begin repairing that damage. People like Martha Nell Smith, Vivian Pollock, and Ellen Louise Hart began reading Dickinson's work and letters through a diverse lens, reclaiming her voice from the silence imposed on it. Through their work, we've learned that Dickinson was not just a literary genius. She was a master of subtext, of code, of writing queer longing into every dashed line. Her exploration of gender was just as radical. She often used masculine language to refer to herself and defied gender expectations by living outside traditional roles. She never married. She chose seclusion. And within that seclusion, she created an emotional and imaginative world. Emily's life wasn't devoid of other deep connections either. She maintained emotional and possibly romantic relationships with several people, men and women. But it was her bond with Susan that continues to draw the most attention. It's been reimagined in shows like Dickinson, starring Haley Steinfeld, and in the brilliant film Wild Nights with Emily, starring Molly Shannon. These modern retellings finally highlight the queer joy and yearning that pulsates through Emily's legacy. And speaking of her legacy, her work still transforms lives today. Her fragmented, intuitive style feels as modern now as it must have felt jarring back then. She was ahead of her time in more ways than one. A woman who saw the rules and decided they didn't apply to her. Her poems whisper secrets, they shout defiance. They invite readers to feel deeply, to question norms, and to look closely at boundaries we place around identity, love, and expression. Thinking about Emily Dickinson and her relationship with Susan, it reminds me of something that feels almost lost today, and that's like the intimacy of the written word. Before I moved to LA, I was in a long-distance relationship for about 6 months. And this was back in the early 2000s. And we of course had phones, but what really kept me connected, what made me really fall in love hard for him, were his emails. He was a brilliant writer, weaving entire stories together and teasing with cleverness and describing his day with the kind of magic that made me feel like I was living it right alongside him. A few years ago, I went through my old memento box because I was digitizing everything, and it was like letters, cards, and folded notes, and each one carried a moment with it, a mood, a heartbeat. I would open one letter and it would be a heartfelt goodbye, another looking for a second chance. All of these handwritten, thoughtful, and so personal, and they all felt so sacred. These letters reminded me that love and real connection, it's all in the details. It's in taking the time to put emotion into words without filters and abbreviations. Emily did that over and over again. She risked vulnerability and she wrote with fire, and she left behind a roadmap for queer connection that still resonates today. So I challenge you, yes, you watching this video, to write a letter to someone you love, a real physical letter on paper. Fold it up, seal it, and send it off. You never know what those words will mean to someone, or to someone else who finds it 150 years from now. Emily Dickinson may have lived over 100 years ago, behind closed doors, but her heart roamed free. And we are better, queerer, braver, and more poetic because of it. Thank you for spending a little time with me today to honor the complex, luminous, and deeply queer life of Emily Dickinson. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever written a love letter to someone? Drop a comment below and let's celebrate our queer past together. And you can always check out more queer history by clicking the video popping up right over here. And you can join the mailing list using the link in the description below. I send out a weekly queer history email to brighten up your inbox. Until next time, stay strong, stay bold, and keep making history.